Do you have any advice for young and up and coming players that might be thinking about maybe making a life, trying to make a life out of playing music for a living?
It's difficult for me to. I think the thing is, if you want to play music, nothing's going to stop you. But if you do decide to play music, you have to put everything into it, everything, your heart and soul. And I think you will make it if you really believe in yourself. I think that when there was a time, if you're talking specifically about studio work, and musicians have been attracted for decades to Hollywood because that's where you make the money,
Mm-hmm.
and you make very good money. It's a highly competitive field, and you can very easily be, or at least back in my so-called era, you can be led into a pretty sick way of living. Your whole life depends on the telephone ringing.
Mm-hmm.
And some guys never survived that. Some guys had heart attacks. Some guys became alcoholics all through the studio. Like alcohol was the drug of choice back in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and then cocaine became a drug of choice in the 60s and so forth. And so they caused a lot of destruction of musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Steer clear of that, I would advise them,
Mm-hmm. Do you have any theories about why that is? Why musicians are so susceptible to that kind of thing? Is it the stress of not knowing what's going to happen from one day to the next? Being out of work so much? Having all those kind of pressures?
Yeah, all of those things. It's not an easy life, and it's been a harder life for some of us than it is for other ones, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those of us for whom it was a much harder life,
Mm-hmm.
it was something to turn to. In my case, I'm glad I was a little older, because if I'd been in New York City, honestly, at the age with my tenor in 1949, I'd be dead today, because, smack was the thing to do. But somehow I was just a little older, and I was able to sit back and say, oh boy, I don't know about that, and thank God for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you're a young musician today, you cannot just be a player.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do all the doubles if you're a woodwind player. You have to be a producer. You should know something about engineering and producing albums. And you should be making records, even if they don't sell, it doesn't matter. Just getting a record out so it's heard helps to put your name out there. And there's some very good players in this town, really great players that I know, that still haven't done that. And I think that's a big mistake.
So you think that the musician of today isn't really just the player of music? He has to be kind of an all-around, kind of be more aware of the whole,
absolutely,
the big scene, including the way things are recorded and
the way they're recorded and the sounds. And I'm sure you've experienced some people that we know, good friends that we know, that don't have a clue when it comes to the recording process or what you have to do as a leader to listen. They just sort of shut that out of their mind, and that's a big mistake, because then you put your career in the hands of other people. I'll give you a particular situation which pains me and some of my associates on Willis's band, is that Willis was one of those musicians and composers who he relied on, he had faith in other people to be sure that it was recorded right and everything. And he's not alone in that. It's just the reason that I pick him out is because he, of all people, deserves to be recorded in the best possible way.
Mm-hmm.
And he has not been. You would be the first to say that. You must change hats and sit in the booth and learn something and learn the way it sounds, because I can tell you many times musicians in that situation have come to me, and 6 months later they hear a record they made and they said, that doesn't sound very good, does it? And I'm going, I tried to tell you that, With Willis's thing, his two most recent records, which actually over a period of 5 years are abominably recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And it hurts us because we worked very hard in that band.
Mm-hmm.
So I think young players are doing that. anyway. And they're having their own studios. Bob Shepard, as an example, he's recorded some stuff. Well, he works with you, doesn't he?
No, he's worked here several times.
Well,
yeah, he has his opinions about microphones and things like
oh, yeah,
that. You know?
sure.
Mm-hmm.
But to just shut that out of your mind and then finally realize that wasn't very good is, you can't do that today. I think players should be composers too. I really think so.